Hi there, and welcome back to the Canna Fitness and Nutrition Podcast, where we are hanging out at the intersection of fitness, nutrition, and cannabis. Thank you so much for pressing play today. We have a guest today, and I am so excited because I have got the Cannabis Connoisseur with me today. So if you're familiar, if you've been following me for a little while, you know that I've chatted with the Cannabis Connoisseur a little bit on their podcast. So I invited Ryan to our podcast here to talk all about his fitness because he, just through our conversations over the last couple of years, I know that he is the epitome of CannaFIT. And so I want to hear, and I want you to hear exactly how he combines fitness and cannabis and how that has changed his life. So Ryan, thank you so much for being here. I'm so excited about this conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. This is exciting. Yeah, you've blessed us with our presence on our show in the Cannabis Connoisseur a few times, and I'm so excited that you got this going and this community, and it's awesome. So thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. So I'm mostly just going to let you talk because I know a little bit of your background, so I want everyone else to hear it. But just kind of tell us, like, how did you first begin using cannabis as part of your fitness? Or did the fitness come first? Or what came first, the chicken or the egg? What motivated all of that?
Yeah, well, fitness certainly came first, I would say, throughout. Like, I grew up in a family that was very fitness oriented. I played 5 sports in high school. Not at one time. They were among like different times. And I also throw in the lead in the high school musical too, because that was kind of like a sport, but it wasn't a sport.
Really?
Yeah. It was, but I was very active in that sense, but not with cannabis, not at all with cannabis.
Okay.
And in fact, I grew up in a household that was very, very strict in that respect. And cannabis use was definitely seen as the devil's lettuce. And I was told if you're caught with cannabis or if you're caught around people with cannabis, you go to jail. And that was, for my safety and for, just the times that we were living in at that point. But, cannabis became part of my journey specifically, and very ironically, because I never expected it to based on that upbringing. But years later, when I was going through a pretty, I guess, pretty poor medical issue, like a digestive medical issue that I was having, just daily. Like I was having trouble getting up, getting out of bed, 2, 3, 4 hours. Sometimes it would take me just to get out of bed. And I had to be in front of people and clients in New York City, always just being at the top of my game mentally. And it was just really hard to do that. And so I started using cannabis specifically to help dull some of that pain so I could just get out of the bed in the morning. Right. Yeah. And I would do that and I would get to work and I would, start doing my job, but it's really tough to be sharp with your presentations and to speak the way that you need to speak and communicate the way that you have to communicate when you're absolutely blasted on THC. Right. Like, and I love cannabis, obviously the Cannabis Connoisseur podcast, but this is really how it all started, being way too high, not understanding my limits at that time, but knowing that cannabis had efficacy in helping my physical pain and help me subside some of that. And so I really started that journey of trying to understand how to take control of all of that. And that came through the medical cannabis system that we have in New York State, where I was introduced to some amazing doctors and CBD at that point. And that is really where everything took off and my research took off in regards to understanding how to use cannabis in an optimized way to really improve your day-to-day as best as you possibly can. And it changed everything. Honestly, it changed everything. So it's, and one last thing with that, I've always been really interested in to walk into like GNC or the vitamin shop. I would get stuck there for hours in these stores trying to find different supplements and things that help you think better and sleep better and run better and all that stuff. And when I found cannabis, I was just like, whoa, one plant does all these different things. Right. And all the things that I'm looking for. And so there's just a ton of research that goes into that. And that's how it all kind of was born in that respect. So definitely medically is when I started and how I started.
You did. Yeah. So you really started medically with THC and then switched to CBD. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah. Well, I would say I was using THC. I started experiencing it recreationally, very lightly, very, very briefly. And then shortly after I started experiencing it recreationally, I realized how it could really dull pain because I started experiencing those issues.
Mhm.
And then it would help, but then I realized there was something else I needed, and I needed the guidance of using it the right way. And
Mhm.
that is when I jumped into the medical program, and I wanted to talk to a consultant or a doctor to make sure that was, so many years ago now, what, 5, 6 years ago, not so many years ago, but like long enough to where that infrastructure wasn't there at the point. And we've come so far since then, I think.
Totally. Yeah.
But yeah, it was there was a lot that went into that process and led me to where I am today. For
That's
sure.
so great. Oh
Yeah.
my
Yeah.
gosh. So you were always active in sports,
Yeah.
and you started using cannabis kind of later in life, a little bit like I did. Um,
Mhm.
when did you realize that they actually complemented each other?
So, um, fitness and cannabis. When did I realize that? So it's really interesting. I went through this long process with my health, where I had this. I don't know if I've talked about it on the show a few times. It's this pyramid, like of health that I have that I've thought about over time, and it's really been just based on my experiences that I've had. And so what that means is, I was very unhealthy. I was 60 pounds overweight. I was on 5 or 6 different medications, and one day I was in Brooklyn where I lived, and I was just walking by this place that I walked by over and over again, and I always thought to myself, what is this place? And I walked in, and it was CrossFit 718 in Brooklyn, a great CrossFit gym.
Yeah.
If any of you that are listening in Brooklyn, and it changed my life. I started, going to this place, and um, what was it, 4 days for 4 years, and I would go 5 days a week. And they taught me how to eat better. They taught me how to work out better. They taught me about yoga. It's actually where I got my first cannabis carts, and I started using cannabis in that recreational way.
Cool.
And so uh, what I realized is that after I did all of that, and I was able to, eat better and work out better and stretch and do the mental and emotional things through meditation,
Yeah.
I found that cannabis, especially when using it the right way, not high THC cannabis only, but when integrating it with a high CBD regimen, was incredibly useful for making everything even, and my life just kind of put in like this path that just made it all fit together and make sense. So it was much, much easier to work out on a daily basis. The motivation was there, the recovery was there. The eating, I didn't binge eat as much because CBD helps you actually not do that.
Yeah.
Emotionally, I felt better, and stretching, I was able to focus on stretches more. Emotionally, I was able to focus on the meditation more and not on what happened yesterday or what's going to happen tomorrow. So there's a lot of different things that just helped that whole thing come into place. And I found with cannabis, it made it incredibly easier to help just sustain a lifestyle that made me the best person that I could be day to day, which helped in the long run, obviously. Mhm.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. Well said. Well said, friend,
Thank you.
because that's exactly what I'm constantly trying to communicate, that
Yeah.
it does make all of that easier.
Yeah.
It's like it is separate, obviously, learning how to work out, learning your body, learning how to eat right, learning
Yep.
meditation. I mean, there's all those facets of it. Those are all skills you have to learn too.
Yeah.
But once you use cannabis with that, it just makes it easier to do
It
all those
does.
things.
It
Oh
does.
my
And it's a really good point you make, like those foundational building blocks of wellness that you just talked, like all the things that I talked about, you just mentioned. What I'm grateful for is that I did go through that, and I kind of like went through it like without cannabis first,
yeah.
because I built that habit just like with myself. And then cannabis, really, I found, again, when using it the right way, not like the old fashioned stoner way, but the right way, it just helps tie it all together in a nice little bow. So it's just, you continue to keep that routine, and that is the beauty, really, that I see in cannabis, is that it just helps you steer your life towards living a better one, and always looking for a better way to live. You're more interested in that type of lifestyle with a cannabis regimen, a healthy one in place. Yeah.
Yeah. Well
Mhm.
said. Well said. I'm gonna have to pull a bunch of quotes out of this because this is fantastic. I use all this for marketing. This is great, man. Because you're right. No, that's
Yeah,
exactly how I feel. It does. It just makes it. It's not that. It just makes it easier to pull it all
yeah,
together, and it makes you
totally.
feel holistically like you're doing you're treating your whole body, you know?
Yeah. The biggest piece I find is just anxiety, right? Like, and that is, it's the anxiety is, it's such a broad general term, but there's little pieces of anxiety that creep into every single part of our routine, right? We binge eat, and that's often due to anxiety. We get into anxious situations. It's a comfort thing, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes we know we have to work out, but the reason we don't work out is because we're stuck on our phones, and we can't get off email, or we can't get off the social media, and that in itself, when you're doing it, gives you anxiety, and when you're done doing it and realize all the things that you didn't do because you were doing that, gives you an additional layer of anxiety, right?
Yes, it does.
And so yeah, so it's just I find that, like, what it does by taking away the anxiety, what you do is you don't focus. Anxiety specifically is focusing on the present, it's focusing on the past or the future. When you take that away, you're only focusing on the present, and that's why you're able to just do those things much more effectively, because nothing else is in the way of getting those things done. Yeah.
Exactly. Again, well said. You know, I think, and I think you and I have talked about this separately too. Like, you know, it just makes you more present in the moment. And you're right. With anxiety, you're either worrying about what's ahead of you, or worrying about what happened.
Yeah.
And you're not thinking about what's going on right now. But cannabis, you know, for me too, keeps me in the moment. And so, like, when I'm, you know, I've struggled with binge eating too. And they, you know, so instead of, you know, thinking ahead to what can I eat, in the moment, I'm going, oh, you know what? I'm actually not hungry. So maybe right now, what I don't need is food. Maybe right now, what I need is just to close my eyes, you know, or something like that. It keeps you present.
Totally. And I just, what's, you know, I used to be a big drinker as well. And that I never understood how anybody, I used to ask my friends this who are big into cannabis, I said, if you, the rest of your life, would you choose cannabis or would you choose alcohol? And they would tell me cannabis, and I never understood it. Right. But now I do understand it. Obviously the detriments that alcohol, you know, puts you through, and why you wouldn't want to choose like alcohol for the rest of your life. But definitely what I found with cannabis is it helps in that respect as well. So a lot of people, when they binge drink, they're drinking too much, they're eating too much. What I found specifically, and I was amazed at, and I could not find in any other format, was when I would use high CBD cannabis, not high THC cannabis. That makes you twisted. People like that too, but it makes you twisted, right? But high CBD cannabis, it puts you in this place where you can drink, you can have a drink, and you can maybe have two, but for those that want to keep going, there just the need isn't there anymore. You feel satiated. And I think part of what happens is cannabis helps release some of those endorphins that are released when, you know, you drink alcohol as well. You feel really good. You want to keep going. And cannabis does the same thing. So you get a little bit of that surge. But what also happens is CBD, it kind of keeps you even Steven, right? Like the whole time, and doesn't, you know, you don't feel like you want to get crazier and want to take that shot. And so again, very foundationally, just leans you into this middle ground of living that balanced life that a lot of people are looking for, and helps us live our best life, honestly. So
Exactly. So tell us a little bit about how your routine with cannabis these days, and with your incorporating your exercise and everything too.
Yeah. So what I do, my routine with cannabis, and I do really think it's a routine. And I think it's also a tricky situation too, because some people would say, well, is it an addiction? And I mean, I would say it's an addiction as much as water is an addiction, right? Like to us. And you know, we need water every day. Your body has an endocannabinoid system, and you need to supplement if it's out of whack, right? And so for me, every morning for probably 10, 15 years, or probably even 20 years, I would say, like maybe 30, I don't know. Like my digestive system and the way I wake up in the morning has been out of whack. And so for me, it's really helpful to start my day with an anti-inflammatory, and a potent one. And that comes in the form of typically whole flower CBD and CBG vaping is what I usually do every single day to start my day. I will sometimes add like some THC, but usually when I get up, that's when, you know, you got the creakies, and, you know, you feel a little stiff and everything. And I'll do that. I'll grind a little bit of flour, a nug of CBD, a nug of CBG. I'll vape that. And then it instantly just makes my body feel better. And then I just kind of perk up mentally and just physically as well. And then I add that to my coffee. And then on top of that, what I'll do is I'll do a little bit of exercise, and I sweat every single morning. And so when you put the three together, and I do add THC to that process eventually once I start the workout, because I enjoy getting motivated, getting focused, and focusing only on that workout and pushing through some of the pain as well. But there is a process that I've learned that I think rings true to me, and it's the hippie speedball. I don't know if you've ever heard of that.
I've heard of it because you've talked about it, but tell us all about it.
Yeah. So Stephen Kotler, he has come up with this. It was years ago, and the hippie speedball is essentially just doing a little bit of sweat every day, like a HIIT workout, adding some caffeine like coffee, and then using a little bit of sativa cannabis. And if you put those three things together, what essentially happens is you get into this like ultimate flow mindset. And essentially I do this every single day before I start my day. And if I don't do it before I start my day, I notice it's a noticeable difference in regards to my productivity throughout the day and how I'm feeling throughout the day. Yes. And so, yeah, really that's how I've done it every day, is a little bit of cold brew, a little bit of the whole flower, to get me started, to feel better. And then I add that workout on top of it, because to wait until the end of the day to do a workout is a risk, because the likelihood of it happening, and you have all these things that pile up in your agenda throughout the day, it's just so hard to do it afterwards. So routine, you mentioned it, like the routine is huge, and making sure that I take my vitamins, real vitamins, like actual vitamins that you think about, like vitamin B and all that stuff in the morning, right? With my cannabis, with my workouts, with my coffee is how I start my routine for the day. And then
amazing.
Typically, like what I'll do from there is if I'm trying to slow it down a bit, I'll switch into like a hybrid, or I'll add more CBD throughout the day to just kind of calm me down a little bit. It all depends on like what I'm doing and what I'm needing for the time is how I would switch that up or add or remove things. Yeah.
Yeah. That's interesting. That's so interesting. I think, I do the same, except in a different order for the same reasons, and I think that's the beauty of it too, is everybody can create their own routine. I do the caffeine first, then the workout, because I've been a morning workout person like my whole life. So that gets the shakes out. It gets my mind focused. But then what I do is I go directly into my CBD, CBG, and that keeps me in the focused state. So because I'm so used to that, and I've got all the, get the cobwebs out and all that. And then what it does then is it keeps me in that good state until, later, when I can start supplementing more or adding THC, depending on the day or what's going on.
Do you use flower or use tincture, or how do you use edibles?
It's a combination. Right now I'm using CBD, CBG tincture in the morning. I do the dryer vape, CBD. Usually the first part of the day is CBD, CBG. And then as the day gets later, or if I have a lot of like writing to do, like focus work or creative work, if I'm doing, social media stuff, I'll take THC, because that gets me into the zone for writing, creativity, all that stuff. And it's so much easier when I can like really focus on that. But it's so funny. Isn't it?
Just because we think about THC as being the recreational. I've heard this so many times. THC is bad and CBD is good, and it's just like so not true. THC is really good for me a lot of the times, right? Like I love it, but it's the same thing. Like I mentioned this before too. I don't think today yet so far, but like if you drink a gallon of milk, like you'll get sick, right? Like everyone will get sick, but just don't drink a gallon of milk. You drink a little bit of milk, a little bit of orange juice, then then you feel good. But if you drink a gallon of those things, you're going to feel sick. Same with THC.
Totally.
A little bit is totally fine. That, in fact, one of the things I just love about THC is again, the endocannabinoid system and the just the molecules that you have inside of you, right? The ATP or the adenosine molecules that are internal, the endocannabinoids, and those completely lock into your CB1 receptors, just like a lock and key, a lot of these cannabinoids, or they act as different agonists for different parts of your body, like the dopamine receptors and whatnot. So there's just like a lot of benefits, to utilizing cannabis that we don't even consider. And we just always think THC is bad and CBD is good. And it's just never, it's just off.
No, you're right. Yeah. And I think, and what you're saying is, it all comes down to the dosing. And I think that's where it gets really nuanced. And that's where, I feel like I'm qualified to help people. And that's where I want to be helping people, is to understand that, THC acts very differently in small doses than it does in large doses.
Yeah.
So, like when you and I are talking, we're not talking about getting blasted. We're not talking about that. Like, that's fun sometimes in certain areas, but to do our work, we're both working professionals, and to do fitness and stuff, usually it's just a focus thing, it just helps you focus and get in the zone. So very small amounts can actually do wonders. And so it's all about, so how did you figure out how to dose? Like, how did you do self-dosing with CBD and THC?
Yeah. Well, trial and error, which is like the worst way to do it, right? But that's like, it's like all you have to work with.
That's kind of all there is right now, unfortunately.
Well, we do have options now that we can look at that are like LeafWell is a place that admittedly I work at now. And it's the reason I love it is because they offer cannabis trained doctors, like cannabis trained, oncologists, for example, for people to actually talk to. So there are like services that you can call and talk to somebody who's medically trained, cannabis trained, to talk to about some of those things. But I'm sorry, what was the first part of the question? I forget what you said.
Oh, just how did you figure out your dosing, like your self-dosing? Like, how did you?
So I didn't have that, right? We didn't have that option. So the way I had to do it was I think a way that most people aren't willing to do it, which is just literal trial and error. Like I was like just obsessed with, in the beginning, at least, like how many milligrams of this am I taking? And how, if I hit my vape for 3 seconds, how many milligrams of THC is that? And how many milligrams? And that's crazy, I think, to do it that way. But like, in the beginning, when I was learning, I really wanted to make sure that I was not going to overdo it. I wasn't going to be in a place I didn't want to be in. And so when I realized that there were these synergies between THC and CBD, and how CBD can help bring down that psychoactivity of THC, but how they enhance each other at the same time, you just start doing some of that like ratio, like comparison differences. Like, how do I feel today that I did a 2-to-1 CBD to THC ratio, and yesterday I did a 1-to-1? Actually, it's a big difference, like how I felt, which is crazy. Like, and you don't think about it that way. And it's an even bigger difference when it's a 21 ratio. So it's like, it's just going day by day is what I had to do. But I would say to people now not to do that. I think what you do now is now that we know that like there's non-psychoactive cannabinoids out there that are really helpful, and we have good data on this stuff. Start with those and start with a non-psychoactive cannabinoid, like high CBD, high CBG type regimen. And then I would shift to add more THC as you go along. But what that looks like is start with like a 25 milligram CBD gummy or 50 milligram CBD gummy every day, whatever it is that you're looking. High CBD, low THC, and then just start adding a little bit of THC. Like get some THC gummies if you want to do that, or some tinctures, and then just start dropping those in a little bit and see how you feel, because you have that baseline CBD already that's in your system that'll keep you from going too high. It acts as an anchor. So it's that trial and error, but I would say start on the side now of non-psychoactive options if you're new, and then work towards the psychoactive options, because we know that that's a much better experience than just jumping into the deep end. I've almost kicked myself off a flight before. Not that bad, but just freaking out because like, I'm like, whoa, didn't know that was going to happen. I was going to feel like this. And why is that guy getting into his bag? Why is he looking so sketchy? What has he got, a bomb in there? It's like, oh no,
right. Yeah. You get paranoid. Well, that's the thing. And that's, again, a lot of the reason I decided to get certified is because these are things that people need to know. This is really important, because people hear cannabis and they automatically assume we're just all getting stoned. But what I think, what you're saying to me, what it sounds like you're saying, is that you listen to your body. And you just started to listen, and you just started to see like, oh, this makes me feel like this. Oh, if I add a little bit of this, now I feel like this.
Yep.
And that's really, you could call it trial and error. You could call it listening to your body. You can call it mindfulness, whatever you want to call it. It's just paying attention.
Yeah.
And, and being cautious and careful. And I know a lot of people are anxious about trying it because it can make you anxious in high doses.
Yeah.
But like you said, I would never tell anybody to just go smoke a joint and see what you think. Like, not at all recommending. No, we're still recommending CBD. Start with CBD, slowly add THC. I always tell people, I'd rather you not feel anything first time and then come back to me than have a horrible experience.
Yeah, because you can't reverse that experience once it's there. It's like etched in your brain forever. And it's
it is etched in your brain.
And so you have to.
Well, and people don't always know too, like, again, we've talked about this. I think you actually mentioned it, but CBD brings down the high of THC. Yeah. So, for people that are just trying it, it's really helpful to have both on hand. Yeah. If you're going to go out of your way to get it and try it, then get both. Get both so that you can bring yourself down if you accidentally take too much.
And it's funny. I even recently, like, I'll go on tolerance breaks because I think it's important to do that. And a lot of people will get to a point where like, I don't feel anything. Cannabis doesn't work for me anymore. No, you got to go on a tolerance break, because when you do, you just kind of revive those receptors again. And I'll go on a break for not even that long. Like, it'll be like 2 or 3 days. And then I will go outside on that Friday and I will smoke a joint, right? And I'll be like, woo, it's just like the first time doing cannabis all over again. Like, you have that little bit of baseline, you know what I mean? But like, you don't need that long of like a break to to like really feel that effect.
No, you don't. No. And that's so important. I was talking to a woman at the dispensary a couple of weeks ago. And she was saying, I've tried all these sleep aids and none of them work. And she also smokes recreationally. So I was like, well, when was the last time you took a break? And her friend laughed, like this girl never takes a break. And I was like, well, that's why the products aren't working then.
Yeah, that's it. It makes a huge difference. Like your receptor, like when you do that, you have these little CB1 receptors. I envision them being in like this ocean, right? And like, or just sitting there. And then when you take too much THC, you're just flooding them. They're just flooded. They're just slammed with too much THC. They are out of there's no vacancy. There's no room for any more THC. And that's what happens. And so you pump yourself with more. You don't feel anything. In fact, you feel dull. Like I feel like you take too much, you start feeling really dull, and you almost get like, you don't get depressed, but you're just like, what you just get very dull. That's the best way I can put it. And
dull is the word. Yes.
Yeah. And I think like to revive that, you stop using cannabis for a few days. Now, what that doesn't mean, in my opinion, is you don't have to completely stop using all forms of cannabis. Like, I think using CBD only is a great way to take a tolerance break, because a lot of us use it for medical purposes and all the way down to just minimal anxiety. And to use like CBD to help with your tolerance break, you're going to get some anxiety when you just go cold turkey on something like that. But CBD is going to help you just keep that away. It's going to help you kind of keep your cool. And when you're done with those 3-4 days and you've just used CBD, you still have taken care of your elements, but you can go back to feeling great, and you start using THC again. And it's you're kind of reset a little bit too. So tolerance breaks are huge to make sure that cannabis stays effective. I think that's a big piece to always remember.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. You're right on. So do you have favorite strains or products, or what do you use for, specifically for, especially your workout time and your recovery process? What do you use?
Yeah, so I do. I have, anyone that's familiar with my show knows that I like Jack Herrera. It is that, I don't know what that strain does. I know what it does. It gets me exactly where I need to be, but like, I don't know how it does it, but it's everyone's different, right? Everyone's got their own strain. For me, Jack Herrera, I take it in the morning. It helps me get super fired up, super focused, dialed in. And if I have to like bang out a bunch of monotonous stuff like on the computer, I use that too, because it's so easy to lose focus when you're doing monotonous things, and I'm horrible at that. Horrible at that. But like when I use Jack Herrera, for example, I'm like, oh, I can do monotonous stuff over and over again, and I'm great at it. And and sometimes you just got to do that for life, right?
For
And
sure.
so it's great for that. It's great for the workouts too.
Yep.
Certainly, like before I go for a run, I love doing that. I like using some Durban Poison for like high energy stuff because of the THCV.
Yes.
I also have been starting to use, I've have it here recently, some THCV drops that I've gotten that are really cool.
Yes.
And so I like that stuff in the morning, and then at night, and that's for THC strains, but I do like CBD as well. I use CBD, CBG. Don't really mind too much about the strains because I don't think the strains matter as much for like the non-psychoactive ones. It's more about the cannabinoids, right?
Exactly.
Than the terpenes.
Yeah.
So I like I do like adding those though. But when we talk about nighttime, I love gelato. I love like Granddaddy Purple is great for sleep.
Yep.
I've always liked Bubble Kush, and if I'm going out socially, I like gelato for that too. But I really like lemon stuff, like lemon hazes, super lemon, like lemon cake, all kinds of lemons. Like limonene just puts a huge smile on my face because that's lemons, right? Like everyone, I mean, they like the smell of lemons. No one likes the taste of them. I mean,
no,
I shouldn't say nobody.
But no, I mean, that's the key. Like, have you found? So you found that the limonene really makes you feel fantastic.
Yeah. Limonene is great for socially for me. Like that one puts a smile right on my face. I love it. And then what I find is pinene and terpinolene are really good for helping me focus. I use those quite a bit for that. And I love linalool for like if I'm really anxious and I just need to like cut off my brain, but I still need to be awake and do things. Linalool, which is essentially the same scent from lavender, is amazing, and it's very, very relaxing, and it always does the job. And one more thing with lavender, what I've done is I've taken dried lavender too, and I'll put that in my cannabis and I'll vape it, and it's really potent. Like I always, and I get fresh lavender when the season hits, and I'll take that and I'll dry it too, and that's it's really, really nice way to feel calmer. It's very, very potent, so you only need like one or two little nugs of lavender buds, but super amazing way to relax. Yeah.
That's a great idea. That's really great. Did you grow it? Do you grow your lavender?
Well, we have like fields around here that like and we can like buy lavender, so we'll just go to the fields, we'll grab some lavender and we'll come back. Yeah, but I've always, and some of the stuff out here, like I've vaped before too. Like there's some mugworts and stuff. We'll have like some of that you can out in the fields that we can pick. Sometimes I'll do that. Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, that's neat. That's a cool combination.
Yeah. Well, I don't live in New York City anymore, so I can do that stuff. I would never do that in New York City.
Right. Yeah. No, you can't do no. That's not something that happens in New York City. There's no fields.
Yeah, no fields. And if those plants are there, you don't know who's been messing with them already. So you don't want any part of that. Yeah, exactly.
That's so true. That's so true. Well, have you noticed that using the CBD or the THC or any of that, any cannabis, do you notice that that's helped with your recovery process and being able to work out frequently without injury?
Yeah. Oh yeah. That's why I think for sure that's it's cut my routine for years now. I when you work out really hard afterwards, sometimes just getting out of bed is so difficult. Like you're just like, use that new muscle for the first time that you haven't used in years. And like, it's really hard. And but like, you're not like hurt, right? You just don't feel comfortable, but you're not hurt. And so if you're not hurt and you still like can get around, you need to get around and move throughout the day and do what you got to do, which is just about everybody, then that's where I think cannabis is an enormous assistance, and probably even more so than working out, because not everybody works out. Most people are first dealing with pain, I think, and so I think just to get you stop feeling that pain so you feel more motivated so you can get to the point where you work out, I think is really helpful. So to your point, absolutely recovery. I think CBD is a big one, CBG too, but CBD is huge for recovery. And I typically will use a hybrid strain as well if I'm using CBD. So that's I'm usually working out like during the day. And so I normally wouldn't want to go straight to indica. And sativas are fine, but usually they don't have that relaxing effect that I like.
Mhm.
So hybrids are good. Usually a nice hybrid works well for me. Like I said, like a gelato or something like that. And there's a lot of different types of hybrids that
Yeah.
is when you add the CBD, they're just kind of all the same thing if you get like a 1-to-1 ratio going. So
Yeah.
my experience.
Interesting. Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Great,
Yeah.
man. Have you encountered any challenges or misconceptions about using cannabis in relation to your fitness, and how have you addressed those?
Well, okay, so misconceptions, absolutely. People are floored when they understand. Wow, you use cannabis when you work out? I'm like, yep, I do, and it's great. I run farther, I run faster, I work out more, all that stuff.
Yes.
Challenges is knowing what your limit is before you do it, right? And that goes back to using CBD again to start and building in THC from there.
Mhm.
Because then you can go to the gym, high CBD regimen, and really like feel good. Like you'll feel more calm, which could help, right? Your workout at the end of the day. It's not gonna make you go to sleep typically, unless you're really, really tired, then it'll put you to sleep. But if you're just, I would say the challenge is using too much THC when you're not familiar with cannabis and how your body reacts to it, and then trying to work out at the gym, which I've done before, and then I just walk out because I'm like, this is just not. Like, I'm gonna hurt myself if I try and keep doing this. Like, what am I doing here, right? Like, yeah, and I used to actually one time I was working. I was at a UFC gym and I would spar.
Oh, cool.
And yeah, and I did, I tried that too, where I would spar with sativa, and then one time I wasn't using sativa and I was using like a more indica hybrid thing. And there's a big difference in reaction time when someone's throwing a punch to your face when like when that's happening. So and I don't remember, I never would have consciously done that. I think I was just going to the gym and I just kind of walked in. I was probably at an event before, and but I realized while I was sparring, I'm like, oh, I'm a lot slower right now than I usually am. And stopped sparring pretty quickly after that. But when I would use like sativas, you're much more locked in, and like you have more energy, and like it kind of becomes a bit of performing enhancing drug at that point, a little bit. I can see why with the right cannabis strain, but if it's the wrong one, then it's completely not performance enhancing.
Totally. I could totally see that because I've dabbled in a little MMA myself. And so I know how focused you have to be, but you also have to be quick. So it seems like, if you have a touch too much, you're focused, but you're not quick.
Yeah. You're super focused and getting punched in the face over and over and over again.
Yes, exactly.
You just So it's totally you really have to, like, being conscious in your use is huge. Like it's such a knowing why you're going to use cannabis before you. And I've been using cannabis for consistently now for, I don't know, over 5 years, 10 years maybe consistently, and like dabbled in it before, but consistent use. And every single time I use it now, I always think about like what I'm using it for, like and which strain is the best. I've never understood when people just have one strain of cannabis and that's all they use. Like there's more parts of your day than just one part of it. And that's if you want to use it on a regular daily basis, if you feel like you need it, which isn't always the case for me either. Some days I barely use it, right? But there's a lot of the times, mainly because of that morning situation where I'm dealing with my ailments, where I do start with that high CBD regimen. But I think, then you shift, right? Like you work out and then you recover and then you go to sleep and then you also work at some point. You need to be focused. And so then sometimes you need that assistance. And I really think that's where cannabis can help you hit that shift that you need. It's not fully taking over. You don't want it to fully take over your day and your situation, but to shift you in the right mindset to help you be the most productive self for that moment that you have to be.
Yeah. Again, well said. And I think, I actually, little plug for your podcast, the Cannabis Connoisseur. I listened to your recent episode this morning and you were talking about intention, and it was just so right on that you do have to be intentional. Again, we're not out here just getting blasted. Like, again, that can be fun in certain circumstances, but for this purpose, we really are just mindfully, intentionally using it. And that's really key.
Yeah.
because you have to listen to your body and you have to have a reason for using it. And these reasons, but exactly what you're saying is it's enhancing what we're doing. It's
Yep.
getting you out of bed, right? It's,
Totally.
using it for that. And then it's enhancing your day by staying focused or present or whatever the situation is.
Yeah. But it
Yeah.
has to be that you have to know why, right? Like why am I using this right now? Like, why am I picking up my vape pen right now and putting it to my mouth? Is it just because it's habit, or is it because like I need a social boost and I'm a little anxious, or I need before I go into this event, or I need to focus before I start working, or I have to get motivated before I do this workout because I want to do this workout today and I don't want to miss it. And so it's like like why is it that you're using cannabis, and why that strain, why those cannabinoids? And I think when you start doing that, like doing that, you're able to use cannabis much, much more effectively and in a way that is sustainable for your day to day, and really becomes like a supporting actor for your life and not like the main actor, right?
Exactly. Which also, again, translates into, eating habits, because again, why are you putting that chip in your mouth? It's the same thing. Why are you putting that chip in your mouth? It's just because it's there and you're bored, or are you hungry? Like, what is it?
Yeah.
Which kind of segues into, I want to make sure you tell us and share with us, because you said you've lost 60 pounds over the last how many years, and how, you attribute some of that to cannabis. So tell us about that.
So I've usually been, thank you. I've usually been pretty fit throughout my life. Like I mentioned, we've worked out, all that stuff. But I went through a moment, like a few years, where I definitely didn't have that. And it was probably triggered by when I lost my job and I moved back home and I was away from my girlfriend, wife now, girlfriend then. And so, like I would just say, like, what happened there is I just started doing whatever I wanted. I ate whatever I wanted. I drank whatever I wanted. And I got to the point where my doctor said, hey, you got to start making these changes. And so I did. I didn't know what to do, though. I had no idea how to do it. So I started doing Weight Watchers and really focusing on that. And that helped me understand what portion control looks like, because I had no clue what that looked like. And then eventually, I started, I did that, but like I would go up and down in my weight, and my weight was all over the place. And that was probably from the years, I would say like 20 to 30, probably. I was all over the place weight wise, maybe 22 to 30. And it was really when I started going to CrossFit, and when I started thinking of my life more holistically, when I didn't just think about like working out, going to the gym, I'd go for an hour and a half, I'd just mess around with the machines for a little bit, and not a lot of focus. And then like for eating, like, I don't know, like I never paid attention to what I ate. Like I never cared about what I ate. And that was that's a really big deal, to care about what you're eating. Right. And your mental health, that feeds into what you eat and if you work out or not. And so I never paid attention to that. And it was just because I didn't, and no one's, to no one's fault. Like I just wasn't raised to focus on my eating habits, and I was raised to be athletic and to work out and to run, but that was it. And mental health wasn't there. And so, I just think, going through that process of finding the CrossFit gym, and they kind of took me under their wings, that just fortunately to show me how to work out, show me how to eat, tell me that, hey, you should focus on doing some yoga and stretching and recovery too, which kind of pushed me in that whole like mental space, and really wanting to learn more about that. And that's when I started meditation classes as well. And eventually, that's during that process, I found cannabis through my buddy, and that whole exploration went. It's just, it was a 10-year period where I think went through the harder parts of going through that process to understand how to optimize each one of those processes. And once I did that, again, cannabis kind of wrapped it all in a bow. So it was really, it was a hard process, but I thank God still every day that I went through it. So
yeah. Well, your journey is so inspiring, and again, like I said, you are the epitome of CannaFIT. It's putting it all together. Cannabis ties it all in a bow. It sounds like you're feeling spectacular, in your body these days. And just amazing. That's everything we want for all CannaFIT clients, is to feel that good and to have all of it complement itself so that you just feel amazing all the time. Yeah.
You and me both, Beth. You and me both. That's we're yeah, that's all I want too. And that's why we do this, right? Like we have seen and felt like the power of cannabis and what it can do. And that is like, we want everyone else to feel that. And I always say, like, and I know you believe this too, like I really believe that more people learn about cannabis, you know, they get educated, they use it, they see how it benefits their life. When it benefits their life, they have a better day to day. When they have a better day to day, the people around them have a better day to day. And there's the ripple effect that happens. And your life is better, my life is better. And so I genuinely believe that just opening cannabis up and letting people, giving the education to people to let them use cannabis the right way, will actually make the world a better place. Like, it's not just like mushy stuff that I say. Like, I really believe that. Like, and I think we're getting there, you know, and
I think we are. It's slow, but it's sure. Yeah, I really do. That's my whole life is dedicated to helping people feel better, because I believe, like, again, I 100% agree with you. I think that we all deserve to feel amazing, and that it may not be easy at first, but it can be easy. And then we're here to help. Yeah, that's awesome. Wow. Well, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
Ryan,
thank you. Are you kidding me?
Thank you so much for sharing with everybody about this. I know that you're inspiring people. I know you are. So this is great.
Hey, I can say the absolute same for you, Beth. Thank you for having me on. What you're doing is so needed. Like, we've talked about this before. I mean, this is like, I'm so excited that there's a CannaFIT podcast and program. I mean, this is like what the world needs. Like, and you're right. It's so great. So thank you for letting me come on and talk about my story and you know, Cannabis Connoisseur, and I'm you know, so grateful that there's partners in crime like yourself that are doing this as well. So thank you for having me on, and
thank you.
Have your listeners listen.
Yes. All right. Well, everybody, thank you so much for listening, and we will see you next time.
Bye. Thank you.